What's up, YouTube? It's Sean, the average angler, and we're going to go ahead and throw our hat right into the forward-facing sonar debate. As you can see from looking at me with my glasses and all the gray and what little hair I still have, I've been around for a little bit. Not as long as some, longer than most. I've been in the bass fishing game for over 30 years. My first boat had a flasher and a paper graph at the dash, and then there was a flasher up front. That's what we had. Back in the day, the next thing that came around was the hot item was Lowrance X85 or 75. Things evolve. Let's talk about forward-facing sonar. I was very resistant to get forward-facing sonar. Really until I kind of watched someone use it who had kind of figured out a way to have it help them. It's not the end-all be-all. It did not catch fish. It kind of more or less showed how the fish were positioned, kind of narrow your learning curve on how to approach trying to catch those fish. The biggest game changer as far as electronics go, in my mind, and some of you are not going to like this, some of you are going to argue it, but it's mapping. All the companies' mapping really improved over the years and at a rapid pace. And because it's GPS mapping, I suppose a lot of people don't give as much credit to it as what it deserved. And it can vary by brand. And I just ordered a Humminbird Helix for mapping. That's what I'm going to use it for, mapping only. Because it's so much better than the Lowrance I have. I spent years and years and years finding rock piles and other things out on Clear Lake, drop-offs, places that held fish that weren't on the bank. I spent hours and hours graphing, throwing a 1 ounce jig, dragging a 1 ounce jig around, trying to find hard spots on the bottom. And it was successful. Caught 48 fish, over 8 pounds in 1 year. I was with a buddy in his boat one day, fishing out on Clear Lake, and he had the Humminbird, and we were fishing some of my spots, and I said, well, let's go over this rock pile over here, and he goes, oh yeah, I know where that's at. And I said, no you don't. It's not on the map. Well, it wasn't on my map, but it was on the Humminbird map. So what took me years to figure out and find was now available by having a Humminbird graph and buying the Lake Master chip. That just cut the learning curve way back now, right? You guys no longer have to go out and search for this stuff. I'm not saying everything's on there, but let me tell you, after looking at his mapping and a lot of the stuff that I thought was obscure, it's not so obscure. And now I see a lot of people on these spots. Needless to say, because of that, they're not as good as they were when I had found them the old-fashioned way and before they were available on mapping. The next evolution was side imaging. And about the time, shortly after side imaging came out, the mapping got really, really good. So the combination of the two, I think, was the biggest game-changing as far as electronics. Aside from spot lock. Spot lock to me is still the biggest improvement that they've made for bass fishing anyway. and fishing as a whole. Side imaging is one of those things that I never spent a whole lot of time doing, and probably to a fault, because I think it really enabled people to dissect water much faster, looking for things, looking for fish, rocks, drops, grass edges, grass holes. It shows it all. And you could see the fish there as well. Next was 360. Now, 360 I was extremely interested in because I'm more of a structure fisherman. And 360, I think, offered a way to really kind of see that structure and pick it all out. I still think 360 is the bomb diggity, and I don't have it. I've used it. It shows a great picture, and you see Brandon Pollack use it, and still to this day BP uses it very effectively, and probably more effectively than most, at least most on the Elite series that we see using it. In comes forward-facing sonar. And I was really more resistant to buy it because the cost. Meant I needed a new graph. My graphs weren't new enough to be compatible, so it wasn't just buying the transducer in the box. I had to buy a new graph to go along with it. I now own forward-facing sonar. I'm glad I waited because I got the updated stuff first time around. And with electronics and fishing, your stuff's outdated every 2 to 3 years. That just seems to be how it is. It's kind of irritating because it's expensive. I don't change my stuff out that often. So anyway, I was resistant. I now have it. And I will tell you, it is not the end-all, be-all. There's a huge learning curve, I think. And you hear a lot of the pros talk about it, how much time they spent. Go listen to Kyle Welcher's podcast with Mercer. He talked about how many hours and hours and hours and hours he spent learning how to use the forward-facing sonar. Now, I can see fish with it. I can see other things with it. As far as the fish go, for me so far, it's nice to see how they're positioned and that kind of thing, how they react to a bait. But as far as the other stuff goes, structure, rock piles, that other stuff, I still think side imaging is much faster. The forward-facing sonar is more about how the fish are positioned, how they're reacting to baits, and that kind of thing. But again, for me so far, it has not. I can't say that it's helping me catch more fish yet. I think it will get to that if I spend the time learning. And as winter comes up, we'll get a better idea of that. However, I don't think it's the end-all, be-all, folks. It's not going to destroy fishing. The fish are going to adapt just like they did to everything else, like they did the A-rig. Remember when the A-rig came out? You catch them on that thing year-round. You'll still catch them on it year-round, but back then it was just stupid easy. Same thing with the Huddleston trout. When the Huddleston trout first came out, most people weren't throwing it. Those of us that were, yeah, it was stupid easy. Caught a lot of big fish throwing the Huddleston trout. It's not the same anymore. This younger generation, a lot of them pick up the bigger baits. The bigger baits are getting thrown a lot more, and they're just a little more adapted and tuned into it, okay? The forward-facing sonar is going to be the same. The fish are going to adapt. There's still fish that you're never going to catch or never find. Lakes are too big for us to cover everything. It's just, they live out there, folks. That's their That's their habitat. Some of those bigger fish feed on things that, like Berryessa, for instance. Okay, there are fish that feed on nothing but trout or kokanee. Probably live deeper than 99% of people fish there. They will come up to spawn and then they're gone. So if you're not seeing them on a bed, the odds of catching them are not good. Yeah, I'm gonna get some hate for this. I don't really care. It's if you've been around long enough to see the evolution of fishing and how the fish adapt. Remember, before some of those other baits, it was the Senko. Okay, and the Senko came out and it it was ridiculous. It turned people into great fish catching machines that never did before. Senko's still a great bait, but it's not like it was. I think before they used to go running that thing from what seemed like a long ways away, and they would just chomp it. Well, it's not always that easy anymore, and they've adapted. They will adapt forward-facing sonar. I can tell you from the number of people that I've drawn fishing as a co-angler off the back of the boat. Well, most of these pros, if not all of them, have it. Most of them don't know how to use it or don't use it at all. And some do. But it seems like so far what I've drawn in the last few years, very few have taken the time to learn it and understand it and use it. If you're not going to take the time to learn it and understand it, much like I did with the side imaging, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good, except you'll have the fancy stuff on the front of your boat. So let's move on. Forward-facing sonar is getting cheaper. I think the Garmin with the LVS 32 can be had for about $1,400-1,500. That's with the new graph and the box and transducer. So prices are coming down on some stuff. I still think 360 may be the better all-around tool, year-round tool. That may vary based on where you live. I'm in Northern California. Smallmouth are not as prevalent here, say in the Great Lake area, where I can see the last Elite Series tournament. Without it, it would have been pretty tough. I still think some of those guys would have caught them using 360, maybe not quite as well as they did. Anyway, this is Sean, the Average Angler. Look for some more reviews coming. We'll talk about some more things and how to become better than an average angler. Have a great day.